Strictly speaking, a vanaprastha, a shramana, has no label. He is an unlabeled bottle. So, in the time when the Buddha lived, about 600 BC, the Hindu system had become somewhat decadent. It isn't altogether clear what had happened, but it is certain that it did seem in some way to be in need of reform. And so there were many reasons for this. And the Buddha, as a young man, being basically troubled by the great problems that we're all troubled with, the problem of suffering, and the problem of what all this universe is about, he endeavored to follow the methods that were then being used by people who were shramanas or vanaprasthas, forest dwellers. And at that time, it's very apparent that the main method that these people were using was an ascetic discipline. Starvation, very arduous meditation practices, probably self-flagellation and things of that kind. And it's said that for 7 years he practiced these austerities. But he found out that they didn't lead to liberation. And all the people who were practicing them knew they didn't either. But they felt that that was only because they weren't doing it hard enough. And so he propounded instead the middle way. The way that led to liberation from the rat race that I've drawn here, neither through austerities nor through pleasure-seeking. See, these are the two ways, the two paths. The people who say the whole point of life is to enjoy it, to get the most out of it, you see. The other people who tried that, and then they found it was sour grapes or something, or they burned their fingers in the pursuit of pleasure. The girl that was so beautiful eventually fell apart, was turned into a shrew, and whatever it was. And so they said, instead, let us torment ourselves. A lot of people enjoy this, or get something special out of it. I was in Mexico this summer, and what I went there for was to study Mexican Catholicism, where they make a great cult of suffering. And I was very puzzled about this, and wanted to understand it. And everywhere, you know, they have these ghastly, tormented Christs, all drooling with blood, hanging on crosses in very contorted positions. And I realized there are certain people who find that sitting on the tip of a spike is the realest place in the world. Because when you're on the tip of a spike, you know you're there. There's no doubt about it. And also you know that you're expiating for everything. This, somehow by sitting on the spike, you are paying for your guilt. And so long as you hurt, you're all right. So these shramanas were doing something of the same kind. And the Buddha became enlightened, became a Buddha. He woke up at the moment when he gave up that kind of quest, the moment he gave up, as we should say, trying to take the kingdom of heaven by storm. Now, what does this mean? It means that in his time, the way of liberation had become competitive, which meant it was on the wrong track. There are a lot of people who, we call it the holier-than-thou attitude. But we find it today with some objectionable Westerners who go over to Japan to study Zen Buddhism and then come home and brag about the great disciplines they've undergone. And say, I sat with my legs crossed in one position for 10 hours as distinct from somebody else who only sat for 5. And always there's this tendency, you know, to have a marathon and be in a competition with others or with oneself about these things. But the moment you do that, you're back on the wheel. The best thing you can get by asceticism is to get up to the Deva world. You can't get anywhere else by it. You may get down to the Naraka world by asceticism too. Read the story Thais by Anatole France. So he found, you see, that the real path, the middle way, the meaning of the middle way is that it's the path that can't be followed. Because to get you onto the middle way, I have to get into a dialogue with you, see, and you say to me, because after all it's always the student that raises the problem, not the teacher. You say, well, now what's the right thing to do? I say back to you, why are you looking for the right thing to do? And then you have to consider your situation, where you are. You say, well, I'm looking for the right thing to do because I feel that I'm in the wrong situation. I don't have peace of mind. Why do you want peace of mind? Because my mind is disturbed. And in other words, you as a disturbed mind are trying to find peace of mind. Your quest for peace of mind is the same thing as having a disturbed mind. Now, if you don't have a disturbed mind, you won't ask for peace of mind. Well, how can I quiet my mind? Why are you asking to quiet your mind? Because it's disturbed. You see where you are? So in this way, by this dialogue, the guru, the teacher, brings a person back to center. So then this is the point. All Buddhist teaching is a dialogue. Really and truly, the man who goes out and leaves society and becomes a monk is a little bit too much. Buddhism involves this act as a preliminary gesture. But what it comes to in the end is the position of what's called a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva means somebody who went out of society, or we should say gave up the world in some way, took on the robe, took on the discipline. He found what he was looking for, but his finding it was absolutely simultaneous with his coming back into society. And he's called a bodhisattva, as distinct from a pratyeka Buddha, which means a private Buddha, one who goes out and doesn't come back. And the bodhisattva is considered as having a superior attainment, superior insight. So the important thing to remember then is Buddhism is a dialogue. And its teaching is a method, not a doctrine. Now, the teaching of Buddhism is summed up in what are called the Four Noble Truths. The truth of suffering, the truth about the origin of suffering, the truth about the ceasing of suffering, and the truth about the way to the ceasing of suffering. Dukkha, D-U-H-K-H-A, is the Sanskrit word we translate suffering, discord, frustration, something like that. That's always the problem, you see. And this, because of suffering, is the reason why human beings seek out teachers and saviors. I hurt, and I don't want to hurt. So that's the universal problem, see, that everybody brings. So then the teacher replies to this problem by saying, you suffer because you crave things. Trishna, T-R-I-S-H-N-A, from which we get our word thirst, Trishna, craving or desire, is the cause of suffering. That's the second truth. Now, the Buddhist analyzes this a bit. He says, the world is dukkha, it's full of frustration, and it's also characterized by impermanence, anitya, and by
far more significant, talented way of extracting information. This is not just some sort of pristine paranormal thing that's coming into this reality. It's really more than anything. However, occasionally, would you say that the reason this is the actual event?
If there are a lot of things going on that will help you see your past experience and your past incarnation that you just left, see it from a perspective that'll be helpful to you, at that time you can get a lot of those flashbacks. You can see that. Oftentimes, funeral awareness unit will be aware, let's say, of its own funeral. It can be aware of who came and who didn't, what's, how that was. They can be, because they're still kind of connected to that moment. And if they were right in the middle of some major thing going on, they may actually see a resolution. Still be active for a short time, but it's not all that long. Before long, they have to move on and get on with the business of evolution. They're not just going to hang around in case somebody wants to talk to them. Or go play a harp on a cloud until some medium calls them up on the phone and says, "Hey, I got somebody here who wants to talk to you." So it doesn't work like that.
You have said it's an efficient system, and the efficient system has to keep going. So this is very helpful to those who have these questions.
Well, yes, and another way to look at it is, here we are, individuated units of consciousness at the root. Free will awareness units at a lower level, and avatars at a lower level yet. we are, and we think that while the medium is really just a database, it's not really a thread. That's a data is not real. The thread is real. Information is real. It's always just been information. Now it's brings back Uncle Fred. It's still just consciousness behind it, making choices, free will choices. The one in the database is no longer doing it. It's just a record of the way the one that walked around thought, felt, act, things he knew, opinions, attitudes.
You all have interesting characters, but some of them are all hidden.
You had, different information.
I wonder why you all want to dress always the same. The same hats, the same coats. I'm sure all of you are interesting and have wonderful things about you. Looking at you in the street, you all look so much the same. Try and express yourselves better.
Help make Fred be what he was, help him grow up. In their claw, if you will, if they can't get it out, and the only way to get it out is with
express yourselves better.
And the mediums who are good at that provide a good service. Most of them don't really know how they do it, and most of them would swear that, no, that's not information in the database, that's the real Uncle Fred, because I can see him and smell him and hear him, and he laughs, and he has the personality, and he has all these traits. How can information do that?